Being from the South, I know a thing or two about how bugs can ruin a great outdoor experience. It's crazy how something so small can affect some of the potentially greatest experiences of your life. And that's why today's show is brought to you in part by Sawyer. You might know them as the water filter company. I actually have a couple Sawyer filters, but they make a lot of other great products too, including their insect repellent. And just some points about what it is. It's great for the whole family. It's actually safe to use on infants and those who are pregnant because they don't use DEET, the active ingredient. They use something better called picaridin. It actually lasts longer. It lasts up to 12 hours. Pretty incredible. And it doesn't damage any of your gear. So it's insect repellent specifically made for families who are also outdoorsy because it won't ruin any of that high dollar gear that you've bought to be out there. And it does a fantastic job of protecting you and your family from those vector-borne illnesses that are carried by insects. I know for me, I'm always carrying some insect repellent because I've had mosquitoes specifically ruin some pretty incredible backpacking experiences. Don't let it happen to you. Use Sawyer's 20% picaridin insect repellents. Find out more about that at sawyer.com. Play safe, travel safely. Sawyer. They keep you outdoors.
Even though I would argue with my chief about doing these free 5Ks, I had to prepare and go to PT or go to physical training, 3 times a week. And once I transitioned, I could do that, but I didn't have to. And I started not doing it.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we hear stories of adventure from every corner of the planet. We interview all sorts of folks who are using their sport to explore the world around them and give you the inspiration you need to get out there and have some fun.
Today's episode, we are going to be talking with Mike Shipp, who is an ambassador for Athletic Brewing. He was one of the riders on the recent Coast to Coast ride. And instead of doing a revisited episode today, I thought, you know what, let's just play this episode from the other podcast Without Compromise, from the recent Coast to Coast bike trip. And we're just, Mike and I are just interviewing about what he does. He's really big into triathlons in the DC area, but also in other parts of the country as well. But he does a virtual, kind of just a virtual bike ride every week. So if that's your thing and you want to build some community and just make some, you make some friends, meet some people, I really encourage you to reach out to Mike. All his information is in the show notes, but Mike is all about introducing specifically triathlons to people, and especially people of color and minorities. He is a veteran. He got into adventure sports and into triathlons when he got out of the service, and we're just going to hear his story. Great guy. It was awesome to spend a week with him in the van as he biked from the Grand Canyon to San Diego. So it was just a cool experience all around. And so one of the nights we just, got out some mics and started recording. So this is our conversation. I hope you enjoy. And if you're in the DC area or if you want to get into triathlons, he's a coach. He does some virtual stuff too, so love for you to reach out. And if you haven't, try Athletic Brewing, non-alcoholic craft beer. That's what I do in my day job. And Mike is one of our athletes. So anyway, enjoy the episode, and you'll be hearing from us on Monday. All right, folks. Welcome to Without Compromise. Today we've got Athletic Brewing ambassador Mike Shipp. He's on the Coast to Coast ride with us. We're in LA right now.
We are.
He's come from Grand Canyon. We've had quite a few days of epic riding. Today was along the beach, and then we're going to finish out San Diego in a couple days. But Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
excited
man.
to be here.
Yeah, so we're in a hotel room. We are maintaining distance, but we wanted to record this episode and just kind of hear your story. You are one of our ambassadors, like I said, and definitely one of the most active. I see your pictures a lot. You're always all over the place with a lot of people, but just kind of wanted to hear more of like your background, where you came from.
Right.
And if you don't mind, man, I'd love to go all the way back and hear like
Like, where did you grow up? Like, I know you're from Philly. You're always wearing Philly stuff. Are you
Always.
from Philly?
I am definitely from Philly. Yep.
Born and raised?
Born and raised in Philly.
How was that? What was that like?
Oh gosh. I mean, it was all I knew. So it was great in the moment, right? And Philly's a great city. So, you know, great family, great upbringing, and just great surroundings, great community, really diverse community, really. I love the city.
Yeah, you've mentioned that.
Yeah.
You love cities.
I love cities. Actually, I was talking to my partner, Daniela, and during the ride, I'm loving all the views. You know, we went to Sedona, which is by far my favorite ride. But once we came here, it was like a light switch. It was like, oh man, this feels like home. Although I loved every moment up until now, once we got to LA, it's like, this is where I need to be.
Really? That's how, man, that's so funny because my light switch turns off when we go to the city. We get here and like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get back out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by rocks.
See, that's the great thing about LA because you have the rocks. Although, you know, with all the fires and pollution, unfortunately, we can't see all the rocks. It's clear, but it's cool. It's there.
I'm glad everybody's different because if everyone was like me, then everybody'd be out there. And if there's obviously people love the city because that's where most people are in cities. And so you grew up in Philly. Did you grow up playing sports? Did you grow up being active? What did you do?
Yeah, I had a pretty active family. You know, my dad was a big part of my life. My uncle, they always played basketball. My dad was a coach for a lot of teams as I was growing up, not particularly my teams, but a lot of my uncle's teams. So I was always really excited to join my dad's team once I got a bit older. But before that happened, I was always involved in some kind of outdoor activity. I'm still an only child, so my grandmother, who raised me because I had teenage parents, my grandmother raised me and she just worked all the time. So she always had me in programs, always had me in some kind of team, and I always stayed busy. Playing baseball, basketball, sometimes football. I hated getting dirty. So I would go like try out with the team, and at that age, everybody made the team. But once we started to play with pads, I was like, all right, I'm going to the gym. And that's where I really fell in love with basketball.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was like my sport up until I became an endurance athlete.
Mine too.
There you go.
I love basketball. So do you still not like getting dirty?
I don't mind as much now, especially as a triathlete, you know, swimming in some pretty, I wouldn't say disgusting, but not the best bodies of water sometimes.
No, it ain't a big old pool of smart water.
Yeah. So, you know, I have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, as I always like to say.
That's cool, man. So how did you transition from like traditional sports to endurance sports? I feel like a lot of people are doing that. I'm doing that. Here at Athletic, like, I've seen it over and over again.
Right.
You know,
right.
A lot of them are basketball too. Basketball to like some mountain sports or running or something. Why did you transition?
Getting older. Getting older. No, you know,
Can't
realizing
be people up.
realizing I have to go to work the next day and not wanting to go play basketball because I'm scared I'm gonna get hurt. I haven't had a serious injury to this point, and I don't really want to risk it now. So what can I do to stay active, build a community, and just continue to challenge myself? And that's where, you know, running, which led to triathlon, came in.
Was this, I know you have a career in the military.
Right.
Did you get into endurance before or after that?
Really funny story about that. My Chief Pena, when I was in the Navy, he would try to get us to do these free 5Ks on base. He became a runner, and he tried to make everybody that reported to him a runner. And if people know about the Navy in particular, we have a physical fitness test. We have to run 1.5 miles. That's it. But if you know what a 5K is, it is not 1.5 miles. So anytime he would try to get us to do, again, these very free 5Ks for fun, I would argue him down as if I were a lawyer. Sometimes I would win. Sometimes I would have to go do the 5K. Through time, once I transitioned out of the military, it was a really difficult time in my life. And that's when I started to pick up the endurance sports, because although I can go play basketball, finding that community through endurance sports was the thing to do as an adult. Right. So that's really where that switch came in. Although it wasn't in the military, it was definitely with a military community at that time.
I'm not in the military. Don't really come from a military family. It seems like it's just endurance all day, every day, everything you do.
Yeah, mental endurance, or sometimes physical endurance, depending on what your job is. Mine was administrative, so it was definitely a lot of mental endurance opposed to physical.
So you mentioned it was a tough transition. What was tough about getting out of the military, getting back in for you?
Yeah, so anytime people go into the military, it's the hardest part is being away from what you're comfortable with. So when I was taken away from Philly, and I've never lived anywhere up until then, I had to get used to just being away from home. So the hardest part about that transition is being so comfortable with, them telling me exactly what to do, when to do it, where to be, and how to be there, actually. And then once I got out the military, I had to figure out all those things for myself, right? So even though I would argue with my chief about doing these free 5Ks, I had to prepare and go to PT or go to physical training, 3 times a week. And once I transitioned, I could do that, but I didn't have to. And I started not doing it much more. So that, for me, physical fitness ties a lot into my mental health. So once I, stopped training and stopped working out by force, I started gaining a lot of weight. And that's where depression started to kick in. That's when alcoholism started to kick in. And that's when that difficulty with the transition, as well as, work, because I got off active duty in 2009. So if 2008, 2009, folks were not working. So I didn't know about that, just being a young kid. So it was a really difficult transition for a lot of reasons.
Do you see that in your other veterans that that transition out?
Yeah. I see that a lot, actually. Even once I started a quote unquote career working at Merrill Lynch, I realized it was difficult for me to transition into there, which is when I started a employee resource groups for the state of New Jersey for military veterans, because I knew how difficult it was for me. So I wanted to make sure other folks that were transitioning to Merrill Lynch had that resource. And I would definitely see folks struggling a lot.
Dang, man. So having such a structured life,
right,
to one that it's really just up to you, like a blank canvas. What happened for you to kind of help get out of that? Because it can become just an endless cycle, as as we hear all the time stories every day of people that something like that leads them down this path, and it's very, very hard to get out of. What turned it around for you, or helped turn it around? How did that get started?
Definitely want to give a big shout out to Team Red, White, and Blue. So they're a military veterans organization and they help veterans transition from, military to civilian life through physical and social activities. When my partner at the time, she was actually at training because she was also in the military, and she saw this shirt for Team RWB. And once she came back home, she said, "Hey, this is a group we have to check out." So just connecting with them and getting active with them was a big reason I had that switch and started to become more active in my community, as well as being physically active. And they were the biggest resource at the time for me when I needed them. Yeah.
So do endurance sports in itself help fill that void too, of like structure?
Yes, because, if I'm at the time, it was just 5Ks, half marathons, but I had to plan for when I would go run. And then eventually I started to do triathlon. So now I needed to plan for when I would go swim, bike, and run. And I still like to do strength workouts. So now I need to figure out all these things, but I also have a partner that I need to be supportive of. And I have a job. So that helped that forced me to get really structured with my life. And that's why I love triathlon, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot of structure for a lot of time,
Right.
too. It's a lot of time commitment is what I realized. First of all, the events are really long, but training for them is, months of very strenuous preparation. So
Yeah.
I could see how from that background it would help.
Yeah, I always say the event, the race is the celebration for the hard work, like we're doing the coast to coast,
Yeah.
And I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but it's definitely unfortunate that we couldn't do the coast to coast ride as originally planned, but this is just a celebration. Everything that I and the other riders did to this point is the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So just like triathlon, the structure that had to be put in place is what makes you a quote unquote Ironman or, a finisher of these events. It's not the actual event. It is, but it isn't.
Right. Right. Yep. That's what we've been saying this whole time with this coast to coast trip. It really is a giant celebration,
Right.
a giant, symbolic celebration of all the work that's been put into making non-alcoholic beer a thing. You know what I mean? A nationwide thing. And so we're just really celebrating that by doing something in our name, athletic, across the whole country. And like you said, and like folks know, we had to change that layout a lot, but it's been positive and it's been really cool. And you've had some really cool days of riding. But, going back to you and your life, you got into endurance sports, but something that you mentioned a little bit ago, like you love building community.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? Because that was actually a word I used for you a lot. Every time Mike Shipp's name come up, I always say like this guy is like a community builder to his core. Why is that important to you?
Yeah, it's by far the most important thing.
Wow.
It's 100% the most important thing. Again, being an only child to teenage parents, they couldn't take care of me. I love my parents today, but it's hard for them to support me in the way that parents probably should now. But I recognized at a really early age how important that community was to make sure I had some kind of upbringing, whether good or bad, at least I had something. At least, the folks, whether it was other family members, whether it was friends, or whether it was government programs, I needed some kind of community to make sure I had some kind of decent life. And recognizing that at a very early age was something that just continued to stick with me. Up till now, it's still something that's so important to me. And I want to make sure I'm always paying it forward to whoever I come across.
Like, do you take a comfort in it?
Yeah, I definitely take comfort in the community around me. I thrive with community. I thrive with people. I'm 100% an extrovert. I do think people appreciate and recognize the community that they have around them, but probably not as much until they're gone. And I don't want to wait until my community is gone to show them that I appreciate them. And I try to do it while I'm here, any chance that I get.
It's awesome, man. So speaking of, building community, you've started something recently called Perfect Time in Multisport.
Right.
Could you mention just like what is that and what's the purpose behind it and what are you doing?
Yeah. So I always tell people Perfect Time in Multisport is not a club. And folks that, know me will laugh at that. But it's really just a resource for people in the multisport space or people that want to get into the multi-sport space. And Perfect Timing is essentially the stories that we try to get across is tell us about a time that you were going through something in your life. In the moment, it made no sense. But as you went through it, you realized that was the perfect time to be in that space. And then the multi-sport part comes in is you get through those times and those really difficult times and use athletics as a resource. So in doing that, we have we have one platform, but the foundation is, again, one through the podcast, Perfect Time in Multisport, which is the podcast, also a vlog. Two, we have our coaching programs, our training programs, and then three, the events that we hold. So that's like the full scope of what Perfect Time in Multisport is. And again, just really highlighting a diverse community in the multi-sport space, which if folks know about triathlon or the multi-sport space, our endurance space, it is not a diverse one. So we are really, really intentional in making sure we highlight the diversity in that community.
Now that you're trying to connect this community, it's in the DC area. Have you seen growth in the diverse community in triathlons and in multisport versus maybe a few years ago before you started doing this?
Yes, I've seen growth. And although Perfect Time in Multisport is based out of DC, we try our best to make sure we get outside of the DMV area. But thinking about just the triathlon community, I've definitely seen growth, but I do recognize that a lot of the folks that are highlighting the diverse community right now are in response to what's happening in the country. And the thing that I worry about, and the reason I wanted to make sure I started Perfect Time in Multisport and continue to do the work, is because I don't want our stories to stop being told once it stops being the cool thing to say. You know, I want to make sure we have a platform to share our stories. Hopefully a year or 2 years later, when we don't have to worry about folks telling their story in response to something happening. But if they don't, we'll have Perfect Time in Multisport to share our stories and highlight those folks.
That's awesome. So you know, what are some events that you have coming up, either through PTM or just personal? Yeah.
So before coming up, some examples, we had our Juneteenth ride, you know, connecting with a friend in DC, Mashonda. She connected with me, asked me to do the Juneteenth ride, and although we tried our best to keep it under wraps, we had about 140 people come out. You know, no promotion at all. It was just, hey, this is what I'm doing, reaching out to our personal network, and people came out. So that was our first event. And our next event is actually a virtual 5K, and it's supporting an organization called Black Kids Swim. And they're doing a 3.5 mile swim, in Senegal, to the island of Gore, with two recent Howard University students, that were swim captains for their college. So we're doing a virtual 5K to support their efforts for Black Kids Swim.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So all proceeds 100% go to this organization, and we just want to make sure we're amplifying what they're doing.
And then I was going to ask you, talked about Perfect Timing and what it was about. What can you tell us any story about something that maybe you didn't understand going through it, but now looking back, it was just perfect timing? Share a couple if you got them.
Yeah. Shoot, I can go back to the first time in high school. I hated going to school. Again, my grandmother raised me, but up until 8th, 9th grade, I always lived with my grandmother. And once I hit 9th grade, I moved with my mother. Again, she had me really young, so she tried her best, but she just couldn't take care of me in the way that my grandmother was at the time. So once I hit 9th grade, all up until then, I never missed school. But hit high school, I never went to school. And the only reason I actually started going to school is because I realized that a lot of people that played on the basketball team, were not. I realized I was much better than them. The only reason I couldn't play is because I wasn't eligible. The only reason I wasn't eligible is because I wasn't going to school. So being in that space and wanting to, play, I had to get my butt in school. I had to get my grades up. And then I eventually made the team, continued to play throughout the rest of high school. But it was the perfect time to be in that space because I needed that. I needed to make sure I did the work so I can get what I wanted. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely the perfect time. And then now I'll fast forward all the way to when I was introduced to, Athletic Brewing Company. My partner and I, we were back and forth in our relationship. We were both training for this race, Ironman Atlantic City in 2019. And that was like a way that we really rebuilt our relationship.
Through the training of
through the training with the team. And we just had to be together.
Make or break you, I guess.
Yeah. So it was like, all right, we're here now. So it was, again, the perfect time for us to rebuild that relationship as training partners. And then now we continue to do that as partners in life. No, not married, but yeah.
And you found athletic at that.
And we found athletic at the finish line.
Oh, so we're like relationally tied between y'all now.
There you go.
It's holding it together.
There you go.
Oh, that's funny. So, taking that concept for your own life, turning it into a platform. What have you learned about chasing an idea, like chasing something out of the box or something crazy? Because we get that a lot. We're making non-alcoholic beer, for Christ's sake. It's like it's crazy to a lot of people. What are you learning about that? Doing something similarly out there?
Yeah, it's funny. People will deal with the imperfections as long as you're consistent. That's what I'm learning. A lot of times people hit us up and say, "I love what you're doing. You're always so consistent." They don't really talk about the product. They just say, "We know that you're going to be here." Mm-hmm. We know that we can depend on you. You say you're going to do something. We know that we can rely on that. So that's definitely something I learned. Just stay consistent, stay the course, be perfect in those imperfections, and you'll figure it out through time.
A lot of people start off strong or have really good ideas, and maybe something holds them back and they stop making that thing. What have you learned? What's one of the coolest things you've learned from one of your guests on Perfect Timing?
Gosh, we recently did a interview with a woman named Mina, and she's training to do, Everesting. So she's just going up and down these hills. And
so what is that?
So she has to climb a hill in DC, the height of Mount Everest. And so she's just training on this hill. I think recently she did about 107 miles in DC. And as we talked about earlier, it's hard to find hills in DC. But she's just going up and down this hill for hours and hours and hours to reach, she accomplished the half Everesting goal, which is about 15,000 feet, just up and down this one hill all day. But again, I can actually go on and on with the stories, but that's definitely something that comes to mind first, just because she's such a phenomenal person.
The community is growing, and definitely wish y'all luck.
Appreciate it.
Man, was there any other story you wanted to share before we move into rapid fire?
Even think about the reason, starting Perfect Time in multisport and something I learned. I can think about communities that I've been a part of and reasons that I stopped being a part of them. And something I learned is, hey, I just have to, I don't have to beg for a seat at anybody's table. I can just create my own table. And whoever wants to be here and partake in what we're building, cool. And if you don't, that's fine. But this is who we are. This is what we're building. This is what we believe in. And we would love for the community to be a part of it. But it's fine if you're not. There are other places, there are other spaces. This is where we are, and this is who we are, and we're perfect the way that we are.
Perfect timing.
There you go.
We've said that a bunch on the last 5 days.
We have
lots of puns, man. It's been fun riding with y'all though. You and Daniela, and in some cool places. I know it hasn't been the cities, but not gonna lie, they're cool places still. Very cool places.
I love it. Like I love the outdoors. Me and Daniela and we love being outdoors. So again, I love it, but I love being in the city.
All right. Well, here we are. So rapid fire. I'm going to ask you like 5 or 6 questions. You can answer either, one word or just a couple sentences, just quick.
All right.
Number 1, up until this point in your life, what is your favorite achievement?
When I was working at Merrill Lynch, I won a Global Diversity and Inclusion Award as an employee at Merrill Lynch, and that was definitely my favorrit achievement so far.
Was it like a global
so
award across the whole world?
We have, Bank of America has employees throughout the world, and they only select about 99 people to win this award, and I was one of the people because of the community that I was building at Merrill Lynch and Bank of America. I won this award.
Wow. That's a good resume builder for what you're doing now. It's literally right on the nose of what you're doing. So what are you most curious about right now outside of PTM and triathlons?
Oh, gosh. That is actually the thing I'm most curious about. What is going to happen with PTM? But what am I most curious about? When are we going to find a cure so we can get out of these COVID times? I'm ready for some kind of new normal.
This has got to be a killer for you. The quarantine and everything, because you literally thrive off groups.
I thrive off community, and I can't.
How hard was it for you then, like in March, April? Because that's when you launched PTM.
Yeah, it's been a little difficult, but like everybody else, just getting comfortable in those uncomfortable moments and figuring it out through time.
And to help with that, are you still doing the Thursday night bike rides?
Yes. So we have the virtual rides on Tuesday now. It was Thursdays, but recently, right before we came on this trip, we changed it to Tuesday. So again, just a way for folks, no matter where you are in the world, to build a community, come do a virtual ride, and then after we do the ride online, we just chat. You can drink water, tea. Athletic Brewing Company is what I always like to drink.
Boom, boom. What's your proudest physical achievement?
Yeah, so I would definitely say my proudest physical achievement is becoming sober. I stopped drinking, Juneteenth 2018, 6/19/18. That's definitely the proudest moment.
I didn't know it was Juneteenth.
Was
that intentional?
I didn't know it was Juneteenth either.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that until like 6 months later.
Very cool. The Juneteenth bike ride must have been a cool feeling.
Yeah, it was like a celebration.
Yeah,
I didn't mention it, but it was a celebration. So.
Oh man, that's awesome. So what is a hobby that you have that nobody really knows about or you don't talk about?
Poetry and storytelling. I love telling stories. I love writing poetry. I love just being creative with my thoughts.
Oh man, that's awesome. So what does it mean to you to live without compromise?
Just be comfortable how you are, not fitting into anybody else's expectations of what you are supposed to be. That's it.
That's it.
Just be you. Be comfortable being yourself. You're the only person. You are your unique self, so just be comfortable being you and keep building community. And if you're not, try to figure out how to.
It's worth it.
It's worth it. I think so.
Well, Mike, thanks for joining us on Without Compromise, man. It's awesome to have you on the ambassador team, have you part of this whole community that we're building. We like thinking outside the box, and we like to find, folks to be in our community that are thinking outside the box too. So I appreciate you joining this ride and busting out hundreds of miles to get the baton to San Diego. And it wasn't what we planned on, but I mean, that's 2020 for you.
There you go. Right.
That's life for you.
Yes. Again, I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Peace out.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.